I found this picture in historic Franklin, Tennessee in an antique shop, and I wanted to see if I could figure out who these sisters were and maybe tell a story about their lives. Not only that, but I went back to the booth to see if I could find more relatives from the same family, and I did. Another couple from the same family. Who were the sisters in the picture, and who was D.F. Hancock? Well, I'm gonna answer both questions for you, and I'm gonna show you how I did it. So stick around. Hey folks, Future James here. I had to do a reshoot right before I was gonna upload this video because as I was about to hit the button to send it to YouTube, I heard back from the descendants of the girls in the picture. But more on that in just a little bit. Welcome to another photo adventure where I find an old picture in an antique store somewhere and figure out who the people are and tell a little bit about their lives. I found these sisters in a booth inside Franklin Antique Mall. This picture stood out to me because the photo was taken on a railroad photo car. Now these were mobile photography studios generally built from repurposed caboose cars on trains. So it was kind of the first mobile photographer. Now when I find pictures like this to research, I typically want to find 3 solid clues. And this one had 2 names, an indicated third sibling as Grandpa Hancock, and the logo on the front. I was concerned that the rail car would have been too mobile across multiple states to make it easy to pinpoint the exact location where these sisters lived, especially since the names on the card were Nettie and Allie, which are typically nicknames. But I really liked the card anyway, even if I couldn't figure out who they were, so I went ahead and picked it up. And I'm glad I did. Judging by the clothes and style of the card, I guessed this photo was taken sometime between 1870 and 1900. But that's still a pretty big gap when you only have 2 nicknames and no real location. Now, a lot of times you can do a little research on the photographer studio to narrow down a time frame. They were usually listed in city directories, and a lot of these are available online in different places. And in the case of Hutchings Railroad Photo Car, someone already made a well-researched blog with this mobile operation. From the 1880s to 1890s, he was mainly based around western Kansas. And it doesn't look like he traveled across states, so let's see what we can find now. But even with 2 names and a location, I still had a hard time finding them with Ancestry for some reason. But when I used FamilySearch.org, it was no trouble. And this happens quite a bit. Sometimes website A will give you a dead end, but website B will give you an immediate result. And the next time, it might even be the opposite. This is why in genealogy we say cast a wide net, meaning don't limit yourself to just one service. Just because you can't find your answers on one site doesn't mean the answer doesn't exist. It just might be somewhere else. But moving on. Now that I've found what is probably them, I go back to Ancestry and start my work. And now it's all coming together. Nettie and Allie went by those names. In fact, I never found any indication that they were nicknames. I'm sure they were, but those names were so ingrained to those girls' personalities that that's what they went by legally for pretty much their entire lives. So once I've built a small private tree for them, I found their parents, Sanders and Emma Hancock. And one of their brothers has a named family photo attached to him. Now this is like striking gold if you're trying to figure out who's in a picture, especially if it's your own family. Now in my opinion, these 2 are a match. But maybe you don't agree, and that's fine. It's when you consider all of the evidence together that it becomes a little easier to feel 100% certain that you've found the right relatives. This photo was taken in Kansas. 2 sisters need to be on records together somewhere in Kansas. They need to have been born around the 1870s or early 1880s, and they need to have at least 1 brother, and they need to be cousins with a D.F. Hancock. More on that in just a bit. The reason I stress that they are sisters on this record is because this is a very specific thing to find in rural areas. It significantly narrows your search. There just won't be that many siblings with matching names, years of birth, and from the same state back then, especially if we're not talking about massive cities. Now, Boston, New York, Cincinnati, Chicago, that might be a little bit different, but when we're talking about rural county areas, it really helps. Allie Mae and Nettie Alma were born in Republic, Kansas on April 1st, 1872 and April 4th, 1875, respectively. The brother not pictured here would be Ernest Roy Hancock, who died at 6 years old. Allie and Nettie were both mentioned in the local paper for having the highest grades in their school during a semester of 1882. They would have been about 8 or 10 years old. Congratulations, girls! Allie married George Thompson, and they show up on the 1910 census living in Colorado. Now, here's a question you might be thinking. How can you possibly know that that's the correct George Thompson and Allie Mae, all the way out in Colorado? Well, it helps that they are living next to their siblings. John A. Thompson is George's brother, and Clara Cuthbertson is Allie's other sister. Now, this little bit slowed me down. Allie's brother-in-law is married to a Nettie A. At first, I thought the girls married brothers, but no, it's just a coincidence. This is Nettie Addie Williams Thompson, not our Nettie Alma Hancock. It's kind of weird. Now, if I had to guess, I would say the family found some farmland out in Colorado to work together. Allie and George had one son, Carlisle. Carlisle lived to be 41 before he tragically died in 1953 in a work accident. A tank rolled off a truck and landed directly on top of him. He left a wife and 4 kids behind. George would die 2 years before Allie at the age of 72. Allie died in 1939 at 67 years old. Honestly, I couldn't find her specific cause of death before filming this video, but I put a link to Allie's memorial on Find a Grave in the description. Now, it was recently brought to my attention that I've never actually explained what Find a Grave is. I tell people to think of it like Facebook for dead people. If a member has created a memorial page for someone, then that's their profile. Thousands of members have volunteered their time to creating profiles for the deceased in an effort to help people find their family and ancestors' burial locations. Many have photos, but a lot still don't. Yet it's still an incredibly valuable tool for genealogists and family researchers to work with. Nettie Alma Hancock was only 16 when she married Anson Francis Goodwin. Now, keep in mind that this was very common and pretty normal for the time. They had 11 kids together, and 8 of them survived childhood. Nettie and Anson did not follow their family to Colorado, but instead moved to Illinois. And their first son, Glenn, died at 10 years old once they lived in Illinois. And if you've seen my other videos, you know what I had to do to go find out. Illinois' death records from that time period are only available at affiliate libraries for FamilySearch.org. I had to physically get up and go out to a Family Search affiliate library. Now, here's a bit of records digging for you. When I pulled him up, it warned me that I would have to manually scroll through pages like classic microfilm. I'm no stranger to scrolling through pages for hours to find something that I'm looking for. But this record told me exactly where it was in the scans. Book 3, page 102. And here he is, Glenn Goodwin. Cause of death is... Glenn was plowing with a team and a horse jumped and pulled him on a plow blade. He was cut badly and died from blood poisoning. But Nettie also died in Illinois, so while I was there, I went ahead and pulled her death records, which was listed as diabetes. Now, I have reached out to a couple descendants of this family to return the photo, so hopefully they'll get back to me and I can mail it out soon. Future James again. I had to do some reshoots for this video right before I was about to upload it because I did in fact hear back from the family. And that's where this picture is headed, right back to the descendants of the Hancock sisters. I get asked a lot on these videos whether or not I send the pictures back to the family. And the answer is, I always try. It doesn't always work out that way because some folks either don't see the messages or think it might be a scam. So it doesn't always work out. But every now and then, including now, it works out. And the photo is going home. Now back to it. After I figured out who these girls were, I remembered seeing in the antique shop booth other pictures. So I wanted to go back and see if maybe one of them was related or looked familiar, or another picture of these girls or something. And guess what I found? D.F. Hancock with wife, cousin of grandpa. Now this is the same handwriting as our first card. This is another one I thought would be easy. Just find the Hancock's sister's cousins and there would be a D.F. somewhere. But no! So I'll tell you the 3-second version of what took me several hours of my day off to find. He is their second cousin, which means they shared a great-grandparent. Now how about a game? Go ahead and guess what DF stands for. Well, if you guessed Delmer Foster, you guessed right. Now I was hung up on Hedron, Nebraska because that's where this photo was taken. But I couldn't find any records of them there. But if I had just turned the page on the Hancock sisters on the 1880 census by one page, I would have found him a whole lot quicker. He was living right down the road. Once I had his name, I was able to find a photo on Ancestry that another user uploaded. And on the back it says, a member of the Union Valley Quartet. This is another easy comparison. These pictures look like they were taken within a couple of years of each other, maybe even less. And this is funny. The note says this photo was found in an antique shop in Kashmir, Washington. How did this man's photos end up in different antique shops on almost opposite ends of the country? I guess one of these days I'm gonna have to make that the subject of a video to trace how pictures ended up in different places. That might be fun. His lovely wife in the original picture is Nellie Elizabeth Nelson. Here is an Ancestry user uploaded photo of Nellie's Union Valley graduation in 1896 at 21 years old. This one is labeled on the back. So it's safe to compare the two, and to me, that's another match. This photo was also found at that antique shop in Kashmir, Washington. Delmer Foster Hancock was born in 1875 to Lafayette and Sarah Hancock in Iowa. He and Nellie married in 1898 when they were 22. In 1906, they were editor and associate editor of the Marion County News Bulletin in Kansas before moving out west to live in San Diego, California on the 1920 census. Delmer was a department manager and buyer at Klauber Wagenheim. Correct me if I'm wrong on that pronunciation. Let me know in the comments. I'm sure I butchered it. Here's a group photo of employees there in 1923. I imagine Delmer is in there somewhere. Feel free to pause it and find him. Now, I couldn't find Delmer in the 1930 census, but I did find Nellie. She is listed as an artist and a painter. I wonder what some of her artwork looked like. Nellie died on September 11th, 1944, at 69 years old. According to her obituary, she died at home. Delmer lived another 13 years until he passed away in 1957. They had one daughter, Esther, who had at least 2 kids. Man, what a ride this one was. I found one photo, figured out who they were, and went back and found more of their relatives and made them connect. So I'm attaching these photos to their profiles on Find a Grave, so any of their descendants who are researching them can easily find them. Check out these other videos where I investigate old pictures and tell as much of the story of these people as I can.